Hello there. So I'm going to talk about how to complete, from the start to finish, how to complete term project number 2. And here we have a project where you are to complete and submit an argumentative research project, an argumentative piece where the exercise itself is threefold essentially. The first is you need to complete an annotated bibliography. An annotated bibliography is a piece of writing, is a piece of academic writing where you do three things. So I am going to provide you with some online links. I will put them within the instructions on the exercise on Canvas. And essentially, and here's a crash course of what it is. An annotated bibliography is a document where, if you think about the number of pages, let's just say your submission consists of 5 pages, let's just say. The first page is your title page. Okay, it's your title page according to APA citation standards. So your title page is going to include a title, and the title for an annotated bibliography is invariably the topic. Okay, the topic that your sources, the 5 sources, are on. The topic, and then colon, ... the words an, annotated bibliography. Okay, that denotes that this is an annotated bibliography involving summaries, and I'm giving you a kind of giving you some foresight what this is about, giving you summaries of each and every of the article included in this project. Then you have your name, got your name, date, name of the course, my name, and whatever else that is necessary on the front. Okay. Those of you who are familiar with APA citations, you're welcome to create a running head, which is the title. Now, the specific format of an annotated bibliography, to begin with, for every article, you're essentially citing it as if you're citing the article in the reference section that usually comes at the end of an APA cited APA format paper. So you've got your citation right there. Be sure to include your hanging indentation. And immediately following your citation there, you begin the summary. Do you see? So you can anticipate seeing something like this. Okay? 5 of them. 5 of them. Now, it's not exactly necessary that you start we refer to these as your annotations, okay? So every one summary, including your citation and the body paragraph of your summary, we refer to these as citations. It's not necessary that you start every citation on a fresh new page. You're most welcome to do this, but you're also welcome to start them at a new page. It depends. It's a preference call. It doesn't really matter on my end, as long as I see the 5. Okay. Now it's a minimum of 5. If you would like to use certain secondary sources, for example, It will have to be a 6, in which case, if you intend to use at least one secondary source, I welcome you to do that. That would become your 6th source. That is this source and another 5 that are primary sources. That's the idea. Okay? And there is not a need, I repeat, there is not a need to create a reference page in the situation of an annotated bibliography. Now, annotated bibliographies, these are, you can think of this as a middle step, an important middle step toward putting together a full-blown research paper. Here is your first submission. Now, every annotation, you're attempting to accomplish 3 goals. The first goal is to summarize the relevant peer resource journal article. That is to say, your summary needs to provide the reader, me, with sufficient information so that I don't necessarily have to read the original paper to find out exactly what was done. That's the idea. Okay? So you're summarizing, that's the first purpose. It's the first action to take. The second thing you're doing with this summary is to assess. You're assessing the value of the research conducted. You're assessing how important it is regarding the question the research question you're exploring. Okay, you're assessing the value. You're assessing how the importance. You're assessing the quality of the information, or the quality of the conclusion, given the context of the topic. And the third goal, you are to reflect. Here's where you are welcome to inject your personal opinion. For example, you may, after discussing or after having read a certain peer review article, you feel so strongly that a certain direction ought to be taken for future researchers looking at the same problem, looking at the same topic. Okay, so this is where you can make a recommendation. This is where you can discuss. I strongly feel that we should further look into the psychosocial impact of breastfeeding. Okay, rather than the biology, rather than the physiology, rather than from nutritional sciences. Yes, we have concluded that there are more benefits than harm, overwhelmingly more benefits than harm when we engage, when we breastfeed children, when we breastfeed newborn babies in particular. However, let's perhaps explore some more about the impact of psychosocial factors when it comes to the practice of breastfeeding. Let's just say if that's a direction you see as important. Okay? So there you go. Those are the 3 objectives. For every entry, for every annotation, you're summarizing, you're assessing, and you're reflecting. Now that's the first piece. Now the second piece is your paper. This is where you discuss, okay? This is where the argumentative paper. So the instructions are as follows: between 8 to 1,200 words. Argue for the importance of a certain kind of research. Argue for Again, if I may use the same example, argue for further research. Suppose you would like to see more evidence coming out around best practices in implementing programs to support new mothers in breastfeeding, let's just say. Okay? Well, yes, we support breastfeeding, but we need to support such in a humane, in a psychosocial, in a trauma-informed fashion, let's just say. So you're not only would you have gathered some sources to support what you're arguing for, you're putting into writing how you argue for them. So here is where you're putting together it's a research paper, okay? So in your research paper, you're citing from the sources you've included. Do you see? You're introducing the idea, you're citing, you're arguing. Maybe there are 3 or 5 arguments that you want to put forth. So you state your argument, you support your argument using the papers you cite. And as you can imagine, in this situation, then yes, there is a title page. However number of pages, I'm thinking somewhere between 4 to 5 sheets of paper. And your last page, this is where your reference section is. So you've got reference, okay? And then your citations, okay? Your 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 citations. Okay. Now for your annotated bibliography, there needs to be a minimum of 5. If you end up citing from more than those 5, which is totally fine, you only need to include them here in the reference section. 5 or so more than or equals to 5 sources. You don't have to go back to the annotated bibliography to add more annotations. Do I make sense? I hope I'm making sense here. So let's just say if for your argumentative paper you end up citing from 9 sources, as long as the 5 sources that you created annotations for in your annotated bibliography submissions, as long as those sources are primary sources, you don't have to revisit your annotated bibliography and create an annotated bibliography including 5 or 9 entries. Okay, I hope I'm clear there. So go ahead. First order of business is to figure out a topic of interest. Earlier I raised an example. In the past, a couple of students have attempted the topic, and it's a fascinating one. The psychosocial factors in breastfeeding and how they play important roles in healthcare programming, healthcare advocacy, and all that. Other topics such as if you strongly feel that our public school system ought to de-emphasize the importance of intelligence testing, let's just say. Okay, well, argue for that. State why. State why. Another topic I can think of, perhaps the trauma-informed social programs in support of children who are on the autistic spectrum in schools. Okay? So begin by thinking about a topic, begin by conducting a literature search, just free roaming for half an hour, 45 minutes, using your college library, using the UBC library website, and there you go. Generate some ideas and proceed from there. You do not need my approval of a topic, but if you want to reach out to discuss what topics you want to work on, excellent. I'm happy to offer feedback. Hope this helps.